Our next speaker will touch upon the 15 key factors for online success. In the digital world that we live in as entrepreneurs, it's really important to play the game the smart way. Please welcome, from the digital marketing agency Startup Masters, co-founder and CEO Dimitar Savov. Welcome.
A lot of what we're going to talk about today is very connected to what Ben just said about the patterns. I've been working with online businesses for the last about 10 years and a little bit more before that. And we see a lot of patterns. We see that every time that you try to start an online business, there are some things that you need to go through. And usually businesses fail at one of those things that we are going to mention. I'm Dimitar Savov, CEO of Startup Masters, and there hiding is Simeon Prusiyski, who's going to start with the first few things, and then you'll have me back again.
Okay, so hi guys, my name is Simeon, as you all know. Let's begin with the first and probably the most important thing you will hear from us today, the idea. Everyone has an idea. Everyone wants to change the world, to develop something new, change some lives, or most of us, we want to make a successful business. We want to make money. For this reason, you need to give your idea a fighting chance. What do I mean by this? You need to brainstorm your idea. You need to figure out what's the problem, who suffers it, can it be solved, and how big is it? Trust me, not all problems in the world can be solved. The world isn't perfect. It isn't perfect at all. So answering those 4 questions will help you define clear, measurable, and most of all, achievable goals. This is the first step. You're probably familiar with this step. Everyone has their own ideas, their own approach. Second step, it's even more important, that's why it's green probably. So the second step is validation. You really need to validate your idea. As Ben said, you need to talk to people, you need to listen, you need to have feedback. So first of all, ask yourself, who will use your product, your service? Who do you want to use it? Can the users be divided into different groups? What are the groups? What do you know about your future users? Second is, will they buy it? Will they pay for it? This is something my brother taught me. He always asks 2 questions. Do you like the idea? And everyone, we are nice people, we're positive people. Everyone says, yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's game-changing. But then he asks them the second question. Are you willing to pay $200 for it? More often than not, the answer is no. So you need to make your idea, to make your concept, something that people not only love, because it's easy to like and love something that people are willing to pay for. Okay? Next, very important, reach out to your users. I mean, go out, meet them physically. Don't just rely on the surveys and so on and so on. Meet them in person. Talk to them. And most importantly, listen to what they have to say. There's a quote from Dalai Lama that I really enjoy, and it's going to be a great example here. By talking, you're only repeating the stuff you already know. It's only when you start to listen that you can learn something new. So listen, this is key. This is the most important feedback, the most important validation you will ever get. And next, look for those shut up and take my money moments. So you're explaining your idea to someone. The minute that this person stops you in the middle of your sentence and says, okay, I love it, where can I buy it, I want it, this is something you should be looking for. This is something you should be striving for. Okay? Next, once you have this down, once you have your idea, your goals, you validated it, users love it, users are going to pay for it, you've met them, you know them, it's time to get down to business, let's say. So you need to devise a business strategy. Most startups, as far as I know, and in my experience, most startups skip this step. I don't know why, but they skip this step. We live in a very competitive world. Most of the things out there on the market aren't just a single company product. So There are a lot of products out there. Chances are that your idea, your service, your product is already someone else's idea. So you should check up on the competition, see if someone else is doing the thing that you want to do, see how they are doing it, and make it very clear for yourself, for potential investors, customers, and so on, what makes you different from them, what makes you stand out. Next, devise a business strategy. And the fourth point, which is the most important one, we should probably bold it next time, figure out how to make money off of it. Figure out how to monetize it. Figure out how to generate revenue from it. This is your business. It not only needs to be positive, to be a great idea, but for every starting company, you need to know how to make money off of it. Okay? Next, once you have all this down, you have your business plan, you know how you're going to make the money, you know who the users are, the users love it, the idea is valid. You start with storyboarding and sketching. Pen and paper. Pen and paper. So, first you can start with narrative visualization. Anyone know what this means? Narrative visualization? Okay, no one knows. So, this is basically having your idea in your mind. And I'm not only speaking about the idea, yeah, I want to do this. Have everything down in your mind. So how the product or service is supposed to work. How will the users use it? What will be the mechanism for generating money? Basically have everything in your head. See your ready product or service in your head. This is the first step. Second, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen, and start sketching, start drawing. So you need to have everything that's in your head. You need to write it on a piece of paper or a Google Doc or whatever you use. And always have two versions, a short version and a long version. The short version you can use when approaching potential customers or users that will give feedback and so on. The long version you can use for investors, for serious customers and so on. An example of a short version would be the Google search engine. How do you explain the Google search engine to someone? In 4 or 5 sentences. You say, go to google.com, input something in the input field, hit enter, get the results. Your idea, you should be able to summarize your idea with just a few sentences. Because most of the people you approach, most of the random people you approach, they won't have the time to listen to you for half an hour while you talk and explain. Have a short and a long version. Next, it's not a separate step, it's not a separate factor, but very important. Repeat steps 1 to 4 until you have nothing to change. I mean, do it at least once. Don't think that you'll get it right on the first time. It doesn't happen all that often. So once you have everything, the feedback from the users, the idea, the business strategy, everything written down, go through it one more time. For my sake, do it. The reason that my first startup venture failed was because I didn't step back. I didn't go back to the drawing board. I had an idea. I had a team. We were all developers. We made the software, we made the solution, we loved it, our families loved it, it was going to be the next big thing. What turns out is that we were the only ones who loved it. We were the only ones who were willing to pay for it. No one else did. That's because I skipped going back. I didn't go back to the first step, to the idea. Is this idea really good? Is this idea really something that people will love, something that people will pay for? It wasn't. Okay? Next step, and please note that I haven't talked about developing anything up until now. So, the fifth factor is wireframing and prototyping. Anyone know what this is? Has anyone been using it? Okay. So, this is basically a sketch, a layout of what your product or service should be, of what you want it to be. It has to be as detailed as possible, as interactive as possible. So you need to have a step-by-step user guidance. You need to have all the screens, for example, if it's a website, if it's an online store. You need to have a sketch of all the necessary steps for users who are going to use your website. So the checkout process, the login, the register, and so on. You need to have this down before you start designing, before you start coding, before everything. The result of this step should be a wireframe or a somewhat working prototype. There are a lot of softwares out there that you can use to do this. You can even do this on a piece of paper. Don't skip it. It saves a lot of trouble later. Okay, next step, once you have this down, the prototype or wireframe, and using this, you can move to design. Design is a very broad topic. We wouldn't have the time, even if the whole conference was delegated to this, to explain what design is. But I'm just going to mention a couple of really important factors. First and foremost is the branding and the visual identity. Most of startup companies are startup companies. They were founded 2 or 3 months ago. You should begin by having a brand and a visual identity for your company. This consists of logo, color scheme, style guide. Make them in such a way that they apply for everything your company does, for all your company's products, websites, and so on. If you go to our website at startupmasters.eu, you're going to see the same vision, the same fonts, the same images that you see here in this presentation. This is what I'm talking about. The next thing are the basic principles of design. So, form follows function. Anyone know this? Okay, no one knows this. This is something that we all know, but just don't know the name of it. So, form follows function is a way of designing stuff to look exactly what you would expect it to look. What I mean is, if you're going to design a button, something that is clickable, make it look like it's clickable. Make it look like a button. If something should be a slider, make it look like a slider. Don't let the users guess and wonder what this does, and so on. It should be very clear. The next thing are the Gestalt principles. Anyone know this? Gestalt principles? Okay, Google it.
1%.
Follow it.
1%.
Learn it and abide by it. Yeah, there's quite a lot. I can't get into this right now. Okay. 7 steps, 7 key factors. Solution planning and technical specification. Again, we haven't started developing anything. This is a very important step. This is a step that most startups miss, skip, even most companies skip. Here, now's the time to decide on the key factors, the key functionalities of your product or service. So you need to decide on what functionality and feature set you're going to offer, what platforms and technology stack you're going to use to develop your software platform service, what's the hardware infrastructure, so where is this going to be hosted? Are there any backups? Can it be scaled easily when more users come? You need to think of all this stuff. Next, API and integration. Does your service, your software, your product need to communicate with other softwares or services? How will the communication take part? And last but not least, third-party dependencies. Anyone here who's a web developer or a programmer knows what this is. This is basically libraries, packages, additional software, or whatever that your product depends upon. And depends upon meaning that without this, your product wouldn't work. You need to know which versions you need to use. You need to know whether or not it has long-term support. You need to be sure that your product or service will not break because of the dependencies it has. The result of this step should be a full technical specification document describing everything your platform, service, or product is going to offer. Next step, development planning and execution. This is the step where you actually start to code if it's a software product. This is the step where you actually begin developing. But before this, there are a couple of other things. First, team selection, team and skill selection. You need to hire the best possible people you can afford, the best possible people you can find. A friend, a colleague, and a colleague of mine always says that you need to hire all the geeks, all the no-lifers, all the best programmers you can find, basically everyone who can understand the technical specification from the previous slide. This is true. I believe him, that's how we do it. Okay, next step is project management. Again, you need to hire the best project manager you can afford. This is the person, the sole person who is going to be responsible for your product, software, service, whatever. This is the guy that you go to when something breaks, when something's not on time, when something's off budget. He's the one who manages task delegation, who does what. He's the one who prepares the milestones. He's the one who manages the development time. He's the one who makes sure that all the deliverables are delivered when they are supposed to and do what they're supposed to. Next step is dev environment setup. So the dev environment setup basically is having everything prepared. Let's say, for example, your company grows, you're hiring new people. When a new person comes into your company, everything needs to be ready. All the accounts need to be created. His workstation needs to be ready. All the IDs and so on. This may not seem like something all that important, but I have examples from the previous places that I've worked. We bring in a new guy. It's very urgent. He needs to start working right away, but he has no computer. Okay, we find it. He has no monitor. Okay, we find it. He has no ID. Okay, we buy it. And we constantly lose time about this. So have this prepared. Final, the execution. This is when the development starts. And take a moment and look through all of the steps that we've taken up until now, even before the development begins. So this is when you start developing. This is when you start using the technical specification, the design, the wireframe, the idea, and everything. This is when you start the actual work. And keep in mind, for all the programmers out there, write documentation. No one is going to invest in your company, in your software. No one is going to buy it unless it's well documented. Okay? So that's all from me. Now I'm handing you over to Dimitar, who is going to be talking about evolution strategy.
Okay. Don't worry, he'll be back for the questions. So here at this point, if your development is successful and it didn't take years and kill your company in the development phase, you have version 1 of this. And if you can do it quickly, this can be done really quickly if you do the first 4 slides very many times, because they help you develop your idea and you execute once. I've seen so many startups start to code from the beginning, you know, from day one. Yeah, we'll put up something, it will have problems, and then we're going to redo it and redo it and redo it, and this can kill you. But the second problem is once you have version 1, what are you going to do? How is this version 1 going to turn into a multi-billion dollar company that is going to handle millions and hopefully billions of users? So you need to plan for that. You need to think about it first. And the first thing is you have this small piece of software. If you don't collect errors and if you don't know about them automatically, a lot of users can have bad experience with your product and you won't even know about it. And that's if you don't give them a way to give you feedback. So feedback collection is the second very important thing that you need to have in place. If you don't give a way to your users to tell you, yeah, we have a problem with this, or we would like to have these kind of features, it would be very hard for you. And these two are very cheap, and they bring you the most results. The other stuff you can safely ignore for some time until you grow a little bit bigger, but then you also need to start looking at the competition, at different trends, and at ways to move to other countries, because you can do something in one country, but you can be sure in pretty much most of the cases that it won't work in every country in the world. So you need to think about how are you going to work with the people there, how are you going to find the people there, how are you going to translate this service or product of yours into different languages and so on. And this will make your plan on what features to add and in what order to add them. So some features will be more important than others and you want to add them first. Some features will be harder to do, you want to add them later, and so on. And another thing that you should really think about in your evolution strategy is how are you going to scale? This is one of the cases where actually we've seen a lot of companies fail and you wouldn't expect that. Yeah, if we have millions of people wanting to work with us, it's going to be okay, we're going to have a lot of money and everything will work. No. It just doesn't work that way, because a lot of companies struggle in this phase that when something starts to grow really, really fast, they cannot catch up and users get disappointed and it dies at that phase. So I've seen this quite a few times. So in order to prepare for this and to start growing as a company, the first thing I would recommend to do is to have a tracking infrastructure in place. And there are just two basic ways of it. I won't go into too much details about it. There's the standard way of just having the standard analytical tools and tracking how many people use your product or service, for how long do they use it, do they stay, do they like it from the first time or not, and do they give you money for it. This is the basic stuff that everyone pretty much here should be aware about. But one of the things that a lot of people miss is actually making these custom things, tracking these custom important things for your business that either make it or break it. And I want to give an example to explain this. For example, Facebook, in order to count you as a person, as a successful user of their platform, they count your number of friends. So if you have 10 or more friends, they know that you're very likely to return to Facebook. So this is retention is their number one most important factor. And so they track this parameter in order to understand how they can retain customers. And for example, that's one of the custom things. So the next thing, Google also tracks the searches per day per user. They are very important for them because they want to understand in which days and how people search and when and why they search more or less. And so this is one of the custom parameters that you don't find in the standard softwares, and they're tracking for themselves. And LinkedIn is a very interesting case where they track your profile completeness. If your profile is 100% complete, they can make money from you even without you using their service. So that's one very interesting one. And without a tracking infrastructure, you're surely going to fail. So please have one in place. And this is not working anymore. Okay. So next, you have a way when users use your application to track them. And at this point, it's a good idea to start thinking about how are you going to really communicate this thing that you are... how are you going to communicate this thing that you've created to users and so that they can understand it? How are you going to expand it to more people? Yeah, your early adopters are really cool. They get everything you tell them, but how are you going to explain it to your grandmother and to a little child and to the rest of the world? So this is when you should start thinking about a communication strategy where you can kind of point out the most important things that your product does and the things that are really unique that only you do. And you can start putting all this into articles, into presentations, and kind of start putting it into content marketing. And then when you see which part of it is successful, you can go into public appearances and try and advertise it a little bit. So you have this content in place. This is the way you explain how your product works, the content that you would like your users to know. And then these are quite standard stuff. It's a lot of the stuff we do a lot, but I want to point out here that this is at a very, very later stage. You need to have all of these things in place before to have a successful advertising campaign online. You need to have a lot of this infrastructure in place, complete designs and well thought of ideas and software that's working well to have a successful marketing. Because in digital marketing, you have everything is dependent on efficiency. If all the things before that are very, very efficient, your campaign is going to be efficient. The key here is if you invest a certain amount of money into marketing, with digital marketing, you want to get it back so you can reinvest it more, and this is how you're going to grow it. And so here I've listed some of the standard ways that a lot of startups think that, yeah, we're going to create this product, we're going to advertise it on Google and Facebook, and we're going to make millions out of it. No. It really, really rarely works because there are some of the previous elements missing. And so these channels are all good and fine, and you should use them, of course, but you have to be ready for them. So I want to put the emphasis on the preparation before that to make them successful. And then once you hopefully create a successful promotional campaign and you promote your product very well, you need to do analysis because growth is kind of a constant thing. It's not just something that happens over a day. And so you need to analyze everything that happened with the tracking infrastructure you will remember from before. You have all this information in place, you analyze it, and you try to improve all this and to make everything more efficient. You will start from the technical things in your product, like user experience, user interface, design, whether it's working slow or fast, and so on. These are just simple things that you want to to start in the beginning, but then you should later on start of thinking how you can improve the marketing performance, how your advertising campaigns and your promotional campaigns can have more impact on people. And after that, this will have more impact on your money. And at a later stage, you will start adjusting your entire business based on the data and the information that you get from that. And you will start launching new features and new functionalities based on information and data rather than just suggestions and hippos. And so you can see that, as Ben said, everything works in patterns. So over the years of developing websites and marketing them and designing them and planning and programming, we've seen that there is this pattern of a system. It used to work like a cycle. Or at least this was the way that we used to think it works, but it doesn't work that way. So everything is very, very much interconnected. Every part where you see the strategy that you put in place for your business, the marketing, the planning, the design, the promotions after that, the analysis, everything works in a very connected way, and each and every one of these nodes affects all others at all times. It's like a little bit like an atom. It works all the time. Everything is affecting everything. And so you need to be aware of all the things together when you are planning for even a small feature or a product. If you have a great idea for a feature, but you have no way to code it, it dies. If you have no way to market it, it dies. If you cannot improve it in any way, it slowly dies. So you need to have, you need to kind of check all these departments, and you need to know how each and every one of them affects your application. So once you go in through this cycle, you improve your marketing, programming and code and design, and everything gets more and more efficient. You start making more money, and this is where you start talking about market share, and you are already have customers, and you are a successful company. So once you do that, you go to the nicest step of all, and this is your global competitive strategy. So you have a business that's working, that is sustainable, because if you have digital marketing that you invest money in and you get them back, you have sustainability. And sustainability allows you to think about a global competitive strategy. Basically, how are you going to take over the world, literally? And the first thing that you need to think about is entering new markets, of course, or something we didn't put there is creating the new markets. And what would be the problems with that? Are there other players that are offering similar or supplementary things to yours? And are there any smaller players at this stage that you can buy? Or that you can partner with as well? Like mergers and acquisitions are a key step there that allows you to grow really on a global scale. And one of the most important things in this phase is actually how do you keep your customers. A lot of startups, we can see that they start to grow, and then at one point they, people have seen them, they're not the new thing anymore, and they have no way of retaining customers. And retaining customers is, as you can see, for example, for Facebook, retention was the #1 important factor. So it's when you look at the global, top 100 companies, you will see that they all have some way of retaining their customers really well. For example, British Petroleum, that you cannot stop driving your car, so they have a way of retaining you as a customer. And not very directly, but even that you have to really think about retention to grow. And how are you going to keep your customers? One that not many people pay attention to is patents and licensing. You created something really nice, but now it's time to think about research and development and growing it further. So it might be a good idea to kind of try and use all legal and possible ways that you can keep it to yourself and not give it to others. You can see a lot of companies like car manufacturers and so on use a lot of patents, and also sleeping patents, patenting things that you haven't done but might be interested in, and they try to patent that and block the other companies from doing that. And research and development, of course, I don't have to explain this. And the last one, internationalization, where you actually have to do that part where you thought in your evolution strategy before. you actually have to execute it now. You have to find, for example, people in Japan that are going to handle your business in Japan, or you have to translate your service or website to Hindi or to Chinese, and this kind of gets complicated. So you need to start doing it, and you need to think about what would be the most efficient way to do it. So I hope that from this, you can kind of make a checklist and think about all this when you are thinking of developing your business. These are just some of the things that can break it, and this is why we wanted to present them to you. And so now you have time for questions.
I think we can get one question, and afterwards you can find the guys.
Yeah, we are here the entire day, so you can find us and you can ask all your questions.
So just one question.
One question.
The hottest question.
Yeah. No questions.
Really?
Okay.
Right, let's see there. I think there's a microphone somewhere around there. I'm just going to prance around like a little queen. Okay, a big queen. There we go. Hello. Yes, it's working.
Hi. Hello. Can you tell us exactly what your company does? And can you give us an example of a business that you have developed by this model in terms of approximate growth and sales and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Yes, we are a digital marketing company, but we are trying to not advertise ourselves, and we try to avoid talking about that. And that gives you an answer. But we have worked with several companies that we have helped them grow from their own single market to start expanding to different markets and going through through the digital marketing cycle.
All right, give another round of applause to the guys. Thank you.